Hey, for those of you that are here, you should probably just take a quick look over the question one before we start, just so it's real fresh in your memory. I'm sure it probably is from doing it yesterday or on Saturday, rather. But it's probably a good idea just to take a quick look over it and while we're waiting for other people to join. If you just hopped on, take a second just to review question one before we get started here. I'm going to probably wait a few minutes just to let people join in. Thanks, Myra. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to post. They were all set up at the beginning of the semester, and for some reason this one got skipped. So, but yeah, obviously the link's posted. But thank you. If anybody else is looking, if they text you. Buddy, stop. Can you hear my dog, Andrea? Sorry. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so if you have question one pulled up, you should have question one pulled up, and you should also have out a blank piece of paper because I want you to follow along and do this with me. If you don't generally, so make sure that you have both of those things, and then let's look at question one. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the call of the question. This one has a few, so it's going to take a minute, but we want to see if we can identify what subject we're in, which I'm sure you guys know this, but I still want to go through the entire process. So when I see the question, what claims may Harry reasonably raise against Doug? Or it says Harry has sued both Doug and Electric Company. What claims may Harry reasonably raise against Doug? What defenses may Doug reasonably assert? And what is the likely outcome? Discuss. What claims may Harry reasonably raise against Electric Company? What defenses may Electric Company reasonably assert? And what is the likely outcome? And if Harry prevails against Doug and Electric Company, how should damages be apportioned? Discuss. So I don't technically know what question I'm in here or what subject I'm in here yet. So I want to start reading the question until I figure that out. It sounds sort of tortsish. It sounds tortsish just because it's raising claims from one person against another. So Harry against Doug, Harry against Electric Company, and then also apportionment of costs. But I just kind of want to be sure. So I go to the first sentence. Concerned about the dangers of texting while driving, the legislature recently enacted the following section of the Motor Vehicle Code. So this looks like there's a legislature enacting a statute, which could be common law, but when we look at it, we realize that it's not. There's no constitutional issue here. So it says no person shall operate a motor vehicle upon a public road while using a mobile telephone to send or receive a text message while such vehicle is in motion. All right, so this looks pretty tortsish to me. So I'm going to make my list A. So I do that. It's here on my paper to the right. So let's say it's negligence, intentional tort, strict liability, products liability, defamation, privacy, and nuisance defenses. You've heard me say this a million times. Your list A might be a little bit different than mine, and that's fine. You just need to write down whatever it is that you need so that you can remember everything that's tested in torts. So you might have a little bit more, you might have a little bit less, but that's my go-to list. All right, so then I'm going to keep reading, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and read my fact pattern, and I'm going to identify what issues are actually going on here. So I have, so it's in the third paragraph here. So Doug was driving down a busy street while texting on a cell phone, so it looks like Doug is violating the statute. Doug lost control of his car, slipped off the road, and hit Electric Company's utility pole. Okay, so he hit a pole. So there's the other defendant. The pole crashed to the ground, and the fallen wires sent sparks flying everywhere. Okay, so that's not great. One spark landed on a piece of newspaper, setting the paper on fire. Okay, so far I don't see Harry yet, but we'll keep going. The burning paper blew down the street, landing on the roof of Harry's house. The house caught fire and burned down. So there's Harry. So this looks like a lot of things have sort of happened before the injury occurred. So this looks definitely negligence and probably some proximate cause issues, and also some Cardozo zone of danger issues. So a technological advance, the wire blitz fuse, had made it possible to string electrical wires that would not spark if downed. Okay, so this is something that probably Electric Company could have done and failed to do. Nevertheless, Electric Company had retained an old wiring system that it and other utility companies had used for years. So that also is, so that's telling me, okay, well, what's the standard of care? Do they act reasonably? This is not a special duty, but another way to show the standard, which is the custom and usage in a trade, and that nobody has upgraded theirs. But I also know that with custom and usage in a trade, an entire industry can be negligent. So I remember that here. Electric Company believed that adoption of the WBF system would require a significant increase in electrical rates. So as soon as I see that, I'm thinking of learned hand. Could you have done something that was safer? What was the cost? And what's the benefit? And that the WBF system had yet to gain widespread acceptance in the industry. Okay, so it's not widely used. It's not even widely accepted. So that makes an argument that Electric Company was maybe acting reasonably. So studies showed that utility companies that replaced their old wiring systems with the WBF system experienced vastly increased safety and reliability. So it looks like it's massively safer and more reliable. So, all right. So this looks, so now I'm going to go look at my list B, and I'm going to, look to see, is there anything going on here? So I'm like, all right, or, what causes of action are here? So I have negligence probably for both Doug and the Electric Company. I don't see any intentional torts. Strict liability could be asserted against Electric Company. Products liability, there's no product liability here because they're not suing about a product. The providing electricals, well, and it's not, Harry's not even making a claim on that. So it's not products liability. no defamation, privacy, no nuisance. And then I'm going to think about my defenses here. So then I'm going to make my list B, and I'm going to list out all the elements, which is what I've done here. So for Harry v. Doug for call 1, Harry v. Doug, and then I have Harry v. Electric Company. I have strict liability, and I have negligence. And then I forgot call 3, which, surprise, surprise, this is why we do this. Damage for apportionment. And this would be joint and several. They joint and severally liable, joint and several liability, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's go back. And so after that, now I have my list B. So I've typed these all in advance so that we can get through all 5 essays tonight. And I'll post all of these as well. But now we want to go in and we want to go through the fact pattern a second time. So this serves 2 purposes. 1, you make sure that you're not missing any issues. And 2, you're matching up all the facts. And so you're seeing it again. And so you get kind of a deeper understanding. So Andrews, a duty is owed to every person. H is a person. And then Cardozo. So H is a person, so there's a duty owed under Andrews. Cardozo. So we have to identify what was the defendant's negligent conduct here. So here, what Harry did is he was texting while driving. Oh, and I forgot, actually. Breach at negligence. Per se. Sorry, I realized I forgot another thing on here. Okay, so then we have to identify. So we're back in Cardozo. So defendant's conduct, texting while driving. Then you have to identify where is the zone of danger. So the zone of danger here is anybody. I would say I try to think broadly when I think of the zone of danger. The reason is because oftentimes you're looking to see what can somebody assert. So you do want to go as broad as possible. You don't want to define the zone too narrowly because then you're probably going to come to the wrong conclusion. So you have to kind of watch out for that. You can anywhere accessible to the road. Anyway, so you want to think very broadly. So this, I would say, it's anywhere accessible, anywhere that someone could be injured by somebody driving, texting while driving. So I will say anywhere a car could go. I would say it's anywhere a car could go. All right, so that's where my zone of danger is. Plaintiff in the zone of danger. So this is actually a little bit tricky. So I think that, and this also tells me that there's a proximate cause issue that I'm going to need to deal with. So is plaintiff within it? Not really. He's in his house. He's in his house, so probably not within the zone of danger, but he was hurt. So you could then broaden this, and I'm going to make a counter argument here. So as soon as I think about, well, is plaintiff within it? No, not really. Well, can I make an argument that he's in it? I'm going to say, well, if you say the zone of danger is anywhere that could be damaged from a car accident, then you broaden it. And so then I'm like, okay, well, I think the zone of danger is probably going to be limited to the house, or to really the areas surrounding a road, but you could broaden it. So in his house, then, but if it's anywhere that could be damaged from a car accident, I think about, okay, well, then this is somewhere. So you could be damaged in your house from a car accident. Okay. Oops. So, but I'm going to conclude. So I still think that there's probably not a duty owed under Cardozo. But you could go either way. Okay. So does that make sense? Did you guys struggle with this at all? I'm curious. Yeah. Yeah, I thought this one was interesting for me to do. Yeah. Good. I'm glad that you guys kind of saw and then, like, anytime you feel like that, where it's like a little bit difficult, then I want you to kind of recognize that it is difficult. that just recognize that it's difficult, and that means you should have a counter argument, and that really that either way you come out, you will be fine. Just remember, if you do say there's not a duty under Cardozo, even if you did, and there's no way you could not find a duty under Andrews, but the court could go either way. All right, so standard of care here. So act as a reasonably prudent person. So we want to say, well, what would a reasonably prudent person do? And a reasonably prudent person would not text while driving because it is commonly known to be dangerous. Yeah, reasonably prudent driver. Yeah. Yeah, good, Andrea. So are we not text while driving because it's commonly known to be dangerous to do so? So that's it. So for her standard of care, it's a subsection of duty. You're saying, is a duty owed? If so, what is the duty? And then for the standard of care section, you literally don't talk about plaintiff, or you don't talk about the defendant. But in breach, you do. So RPP, what is his name? Doug. Doug was texted while driving. Oh, and the other thing, as I say, is whenever I'm going to do negligence per se, I also say especially use the fact that there's a statute that a reasonably prudent person would not violate a statute. You texted while driving and violated while. Oops, I could spell while doing so. Okay. Okay, so then I'm gonna say it's a breach. Breach. Okay. And then I see, okay, well, there's a statute. So that establishes both duty and breach. So was there a violation? It's pretty obvious. There's a statute that, and I would actually type the statute. Actually, here, I'm just going to do it. No persons shall operate motor vehicle while texting, essentially, whatever. And here, so first you have to establish, A, that there's a statute on point, and B, that he was violating it. Doug was driving down and here's another thing. He was driving down a busy street. Down a busy street while texting. And so we're not text while driving. I'm going to say here, like, standard of care, you just are not violate a statute. RPP especially would not text and drive on a busy street. So the fact that it's busy, so that's pretty bad. Because they put that word in there. They didn't just say he was driving down a street. They said he was driving down a busy street. So we've got to use that fact. Okay, so these are violations. So what is the type of harm that they're trying to prevent here? The type of harm is probably injuries from car accidents. From car accidents. From texting. I'm not paying attention really, but we'll say texting. Texting while driving. Buddy. Sorry guys, my dog is being silly. Okay, so type of harm. So then here is like, okay, well, is this the type of harm that they were trying to prevent? And again, this goes to the way that you analyze this above. I think you could go either way. Because I think especially, there's oftentimes, when I think about this particular scenario, there's oftentimes when you're driving on a road, one of the reasons you don't want people texting is because they're not going to pay attention. And that can cause really bad things. So, you can get in a car accident and hurt other people on the road, but people, I think about people hitting trees off the road, and trees often will fall and hit a power line. So I think that power lines are frequently located near roads, or those are like powers like substations and stuff. So I think there's often this type of equipment around roads. So that's another reason you have to be careful. But so I think you could lay that out too, is that it's not just to protect from car accidents like that are injuring people. It's also to avoid extensive damage that a car accident can cause to its surrounding areas. So I think you could really go either way, but this one really took a lot of inferential reasoning and saying, and providing counter arguments. So avoid personal injuries Avoid all injuries occur from car accident. Avoid on road that are frequently there. So that's sort of where my mind went. There's also a lot to discuss in this essay, so I don't know that I really would have delved down this path, but I think that you could. All right, and then the class of persons. So what did you guys say for the class of persons? I'm curious. So class of persons. Reason, okay, so you guys said no, it's not the type of harm. So I made a counter argument. I ultimately concluded no. And you said it was too attenuated from the person or from the purpose of the legislation. So because what does the legislation say here? Legislation says dangers. So here they're texting while type of harm. Oh, I should actually put that fact up here too. Okay, dangers of texting while driving. So they're probably just trying to protect people on the road. Is I'm guessing what a lot of you said. On and immediately near road. Pedestrians, other drivers. Yeah, pedestrians, other drivers. I think you guys are right. Like, I think that that's totally fine. I'm just trying to come up with a with another counter argument because I'm like, well, if I was defending this or representing the homeowner, like this is the thing that I would say. These are arguments that I would make. So, all right. So class of person. So, all right. So here, I'm gonna say probably not. Is there a violation? Yeah, absolutely. And class of persons, probably not. So here, like, and this is kind of rare, I think, in these fact patterns on the bar, is that negligence per se doesn't work or cannot prevail. Okay, so duty. So we've done duty, we've done breach, we've done negligence per se. Then let's go to causation. So actual is but for. Oops. So but for texting while driving, the house would not have caught fire and burned down. Okay, but then proximate. Okay, so did you guys get tripped up on proximate cause here? I'm assuming, yeah. So I always think of proximate causes. Everybody says foreseeable, no intervening superseding causes, all of that. But the thing you have to think about to determine whether something is foreseeable, and including the intervening cause, is it within the increased risk, and is it within the increased danger? Yeah. Actually, no, is that right? Hang on 1 second. Sorry. Hold on 1 second. I want to pull my. All right, okay, let's talk. Okay, so is it within the increased risk? So what did you guys say then? So like Andrea, what did you say? So I'm going to say here, so approximate. So it's foreseeable, increased risk of texting is, the increased risk of texting while driving is a car accident, not fire. So not a fire. Increased risk of testing as car accident, not fire. So we would say that this really was not foreseeable. But you also have intervening power line. But is it foreseeable that a power line is going to be on the side of the road and you'll hit it and that can cause a fire? Yeah. So I think that I totally think that you can make a proximate cause argument. Yeah, and especially because it's a busy street. Well, I think that it's a busy street more goes into the fact that like there would likely be a car accident, but not necessarily that you're going to hit a utility pole, because that could have happened no matter what, busy street or not. So intervening power line and EC failure to use WBF, but likely to have it is likely to have utility poles near roads. Was there negligence foreseeable? EC WBF not widely used yet. Okay, so the fuse hasn't been widely used, so I would say that that's actually it does sound like it's somewhat common, and like I feel like I just see this on like the evening news. You see people hitting telephone poles and it causing something to go down and sparks fly, and like there's this seems so attenuated, but stuff like this happens, and it's tough. So not widely used. So I'm still going to say that it's foreseeable. But so did anybody conclude the opposite, that there was no proximate cause? Yeah. Did anybody conclude there was no? Okay, good. Okay. So why did you say there was no proximate cause, Andrea? So what facts? Yeah, but wind is like, it's common to have wind. Especially on the phone voice, but said sparks will land a piece of medicine. Blew down the street, landing on the roof of Harry's house. Yeah, there was a sudden gust. It doesn't say that there was a sudden gust. And it doesn't say it also, so where you're getting with that, Andrea, just I want to point this out, is if they're said that there was a sudden unexpected gust, then maybe it's not predictable. But here it doesn't say that. So yeah. All right. So that's the word you're missing. Okay. So so if you so I'm gonna say that there is approximate cause here. Approximate cause. I do want to include a counter argument here. So I'm gonna say I think it's really important to have one in here. So I think you could say that there's so many sequences of events here. So you have crash, sparks fly, land on newspaper, blew down street, landed on roof. Too many intervening causes. But I don't think that's a problem, but foreseeable to have utility poles near streets and poles have electricity running through that can cause fire. So there's my my argument essentially that it's too attenuated. There's too many things in between that would make this situation not predictable, but I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the increased risk is that you're going to just hit something on the side of the road. You're hitting something, and this is what happens as a result. So I'm going to say yes, proximate cause, and then yes, actual cause. Okay. All right, damages. House burned down. Damages generally are pretty easy. Burned down. So then I'm going to say yes. Why do I do that? Yes, damages. Okay, do you guys see any defenses you could raise here? So I put assumption of risk, contributor negligence, comparative fault. I mean, I think the defenses here is he's going to say that Harry is not in the zone of danger. So you're going to raise that an element isn't satisfied. That's a defense. You don't have to stick to like specific defenses. And also, I think so you're going to use that, and I also think you can make you should have included a counter argument with your proximate cause. So I think those two areas are where you would want to really discuss defenses. And I don't think, unless I'm missing something, yeah, right. I don't think there's any assumption of risk here. There's no Harry was just sitting in his house. If he was even sitting in there, his house was just there. So I don't think that any of these apply. So I would maybe list them, but I wouldn't go and like give all of the rules and all of that. So I'm just going to write here non-applicable. Okay. All right. So can Harry v. Doug, who's going to win here? So I'm going to say Harry's going to win. Harry wins. All right. So next one. So strict liability, abnormally dangerous activity. So substantial risk of significant harm despite. So this is against electric company. So is there a substantial risk of significant harm despite the exercise of reasonable care? So I think with any, if you're providing electricity, yeah, providing electricity, but could use WBF, which would make wires not spark if downed. Okay, so despite the exercise of reasonable care, so if they weren't exercising reasonable care, so they could actually do this. So you could potentially say no here, but I think it's still providing electricity, which has inherent risk of fire, shock, etc. And then this is my counter argument. Okay. So do you guys think there's a substantial risk of harm despite the exercise of reasonable care? Yes or no? No. Huh. Yeah, I think that there is, but I think you could really go either way here. It's not gonna. Yes. Could go either way. Okay. So I think you could go either way. It doesn't really matter because it is a matter of common usage. So we're gonna find that here. So so it has to be something that's not a matter of common usage. Yeah. So the difference there. So fires in California. I thought about that too, Maria. The difference here is that there's this fuse that makes it possible to string wires that would not spark at all if they were downed. So I think that's a big distinction. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. And I don't think you'd be expected to know that on the exam, but I think, if you talk about it. So yeah, it vastly increased safety. Oh yeah, that's a good call. Vastly increased safety and reliability. It's not spark if down. So yeah, I'm going to add that. Vastly increases safety. But okay. All right. So matter of common usage. So providing electricity is a matter of common usage. The courts have decided that. Matter of common usage. Okay. Does the harm result from the abnormally dangerous propensity? Yes. Electrical wires cause sparks, and sparks cause fires. Okay. Causation. God, why do I keep doing that? Okay, so causation, yeah, so the sparks from wire cause to light on fire and fire. Okay, damages, house burned down. Oh my gosh, I keep doing that. Okay, so I'm going to put my conclusions in here. So I'm going to say no on that. So harm didn't result from abnormally dangerous. Or I'm sorry, this is yes. That's a yes. Matter of common usages then. Actually, so I'm going to delete matter. So it's matter of common usage. And I'm going to say yes, it is. Which means that you can't use strict liability. So not going to bid. But there is causation and there is damages. Okay. All right. So strict liability. So this particular essay is really long, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to get through all of them, all of the essays tonight. So I'm going to skip and just talk about the stuff that is distinct. I think that this particular negligence claim is quite a bit easier. You don't have negligence per se. The negligent conduct that you would discuss in Cardozo is the failure to use the wire blitz fuse. I think the distinction here, so reasonably prudent business, I think that there's some arguments in here. A reasonably prudent business would probably install WBF. Probably install WBF. And then what you want to talk about here is the custom. Gosh. The custom in the industry. So yet to gain widespread acceptance in the industry. So but everybody can be negligent. So so you can try to use that to say what a reasonably prudent business would do. So this is really sort of a subset of reasonably prudent business. And so is learned hand. So custom, I'm still going to say no, that I'm still going to say that they're negligent at a reasonably prudent business. And then here, for learned hand, you're going to look at the cost. So the EC believed, EC believed adoption of the WBF system would require in electrical rates. Yet to gain widespread acceptance, but usually companies that their own wiring systems is WBF. Okay. So I'm going to say that, so reasonably prudent business, I'm still going to say that that they did breach. Okay. So I'm not going to go through actual proximate causation. I don't think it's that tough here. Damages, yes, that's pretty easy. I just wanted to go through those things on negligence here. I still think you do need to go through a full-blown negligence analysis, obviously. You wouldn't just go through these portions. But I just don't want to go through it tonight because it's already been 40 minutes and we have 4 more essays to get through. Okay, so in terms of the apportionment, hang on one second. Let me just make sure. So here, so you talk about joint and several liability. And with that, if they're jointly and severally liable, you can sue for indemnity and contribution. So there's no in terms of indemnity, there's no basis. So it's usually provided by contract. That's generally how it's provided, but there is no basis for indemnity because no relationship between D and EC. Contribution. So they are jointly and severally liable. They do have a claim for contribution based on each other's share, though. So jointly liable. So right for contribution based on apportionment between D and EC. Any questions about that? About this particular essay? There's a lot to get through on this one. Let's see. Okay, good. So this, just so you guys know, this one was given in July 2017. So this was the first time California did its 2-day bar exam. And this was given, just so you guys know, this was given as question 5. So this was given right before people had to do the 90-minute PT. So they definitely didn't go easy on them, even though it was the first time. It was the 2-day bar. The first time people had to do the PT with the essays. So that I think was a challenge for sure. All right, so let's then move on to question number 2. Okay. So let me give you guys a few minutes to read this one. Oh, Andrea, will you just send me a good word count? I think 1100 1200 over that is decent. I see a lot of passing answers in that range. I always shoot for more than that because there's usually 8-10 issues on average. So if this isn't my hard and fast rule, the only reason I say this number is because if you type, the average typist is 40 words a minute, and if you pre-write your entire essay, then which you have time to do, which is this process we've just gone through. If I wasn't talking you guys through that, I did pre-write this in 15 minutes yesterday, and for all of these. So if you take 20 minutes to do your pre-write, you have 40 minutes left at 40 words a minute. That's 1,600 words. All right, so take 5 minutes to read this one. We will come back at 6:47. All right, so let's take a look at this one. So question 2. So this one obviously is BA. This one is, well, it's a BA contracts crossover, but not a whole lot of contracts. So let's get into it. So first we're gonna read the call of the question. Actually, here I also didn't. So we'll read the call. So on what theory or theories may Examco bring an action for recovery of damages against Testco and Amy, Ben, and Carl as individuals? So whenever I see them say as individuals, and I see that there's also a business, I'm thinking of Pearson and Corporate Vale. Which I also didn't. I'm going to list out the elements there in a minute. So what I'm looking for then, I'm going to read through it until I can identify the subject because I'm not totally sure based on the call. So Testco Inc., so that tells me I'm in corporations, conducts market surveys and is solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. Each paid $50 for 1/3 of Tesco's no par shares. Amy and Ben respectively are Tesco's president and secretary, and it's only 2 directors. So far this looks super corporations-y. I don't see anything that deals with contracts yet, but when you get down to the second paragraph, it says, while Ben was on vacation, Examco called Amy asking to enter into a 1-year contract. So that gets into agency principles and also breach. So I'm going to do contract. So formation. So there's not a whole lot of contract facts, but applicable law, applicable law, formation. Performance of breach. Performance breach. Okay, so I listed out my list A, and then I have agency formation, fiduciary duties, securities, Pearson and Corporate Vale. So this is like my corporation stuff, agency, and then part. It's not a partnership. I know that from the second word, so I'm actually not even listing that. So I think of agency principles, which is often, for me, that just triggers everything in agency. So it's primarily liability of agents and liability for pre-incorporation contracts, liability for post-incorporation contracts. So it's just a lot of contract liability, which makes sense here. All right. So then we are going to do, look at, go through the fact pattern, and we're going to make so that we can make our list B. So now I'm going to start reading it and go through it fresh. So Tesco conducts market surveys and is solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. Each paid $50 for 1/3 of Tesco's no par. Oh, sorry, you guys. I have to go back a second. I need to go back to SA1 for a minute, and I apologize for doing this. The thing that I want to show you is with just going through and double checking the facts, which I realized when I looked at the SA2. So when you go through, let me just see. So I want to go through the fact pattern and make sure that I've used every single fact, because if you haven't, then that means you missed some issue. So let's just do that here. So concerned about the dangers of texting while driving. Legislature recently enacted the following section of the Motor Vehicle Code. I did use all of this. Okay, Doug was driving down a busy street. Doug was driving while texting on his cell phone. That's one fact. And then down a busy street is another fact. So I would say here, so this goes in causation, Doug lost control of his car, slipped off the road, and hit electric company's utility pole. So I would have used that all in causation. The pole crashed to the ground. These are all causation facts. Oops. Sorry, this gets a little funky. The fallen wire sent sparks flying everywhere. One spark landed on a piece of newspaper. Setting the paper on fire. So we use that. The burning paper blew down the street and it landing on the roof of Harry's house. Oops. House caught fire and burned down. So I've used all these facts. So far. Technological advance, the wire, so I'm going to use that. So like I would use the fact that it's a technological advance. The wire blitz fuse had made it possible to string electrical wires that would not spark if down. Nevertheless, so electric company had retained an old wiring system that it and other company, that it and other utility companies had used for years. Electric company believed that the adoption of the WBF system would require an increase in electrical rate. So that's where we used that in Learned Hands, and that WBF system had yet to gain widespread acceptance. We did use that. So studies, so this initially, and this is, Andrea mentioned this, and then I used this fact. So studies showed that the utility companies that had replaced their old wiring systems with the WBF system experienced vastly increased safety and reliability. I initially hadn't used that fact until Andrea mentioned it. So you want to go through that because there's some stuff in here in the second one that is going to be tough to place. So I want you guys to figure out where to place it. Okay. All right. Sorry. Now back to, sorry about that little detour. We're going to go back to essay 2. Okay. So, Tesco Inc. conducts market surveys and is solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. Each paid $50 for 1/3 of Tesco's no par shares. Amy and Ben, respectively, are Tesco's president and secretary, and its only 2 directors. Carl holds no office and is not involved in any aspect of Tesco's business. Amy and Ben are scrupulous about holding directors' meetings to conduct corporate business and to make monthly distributions to the shareholders of almost all cash on hand. So that sounds a little bit irresponsible and undercapitalization. Sounds like undercapitalization. As a result of the latter practice, Tesco has little cash on hand and frequently finds itself in the position of negotiating extensions for payment of its debt. All right. So it looks like they have a hard time paying their debts that are owed, which is also tied hand in hand with undercapitalization. While Ben was on vacation, so that's the president and secretary, so Ben is the secretary, Examco called Amy, so it looks like Amy wouldn't be getting permission from Ben, asking to enter into a 1-year contract with Tesco. So it just says here, so Amy is the president, so it looks like she might have, she probably has authority to do this. There's nothing that limited her authority, and I'm sure you guys have seen other essays where there are BA essays where they do limit authority, so this is not one of them. Amy said that if Examco would agree to a 10-year contract, Tesco would grant its standard 50% discount. So this is standard. So she's not doing something that's out of the norm. Examco agreed, and Amy signed the contract in the following manner. Tesco by Amy, president. So she's signing it in her capacity as president of Tesco. When Ben returned, he said that he had thought for some time that Tesco's standard 50% discount was unwise and convinced Amy to revoke the contract with Examco. So he basically told her to breach. So it looks like, and it doesn't tell us here. So a lot of the facts in the second paragraph are, a lot of the facts in the second paragraph go towards contract, formation issues. And then a lot of the stuff in the first is really dealing with agency theory and piercing the corporate veil. So, and there's some, so that's what it goes to. Hang on one second. I'm going to just post the factors in for piercing the corporate veil. So give me 1 second. Okay, so now that's updated. Okay, so first, so then I went through and I've listed out all of my issues. So I identify, you know, is there a contract and then is there a breach? So a valid contract, offer, acceptance, consideration. I'm not going to spend, I think that the bigger issues really here are tied into the agency and piercing the corporate veil issues. But we, just because there's just, it looks pretty straightforward that there is a contract, that there is a breach. But we still want to go through that. So I listed, you know, offer, acceptance, consideration, defense to formation, and then breach. And then liability for breach of contract. So express authority, implied authority, and apparent authority. So we're going to go through those. And then because it asks about suing them as individuals, then we're going to look at, so piercing the corporate veil. So let's go through and match all of the facts here. So I'm going to start at the top here. So Tesco conducts market surveys and is solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. So where did you use that fact? Tesco Inc. conducts market surveys and is solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. So here for that one, solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. So I think that so this just shows their liability. So piercing the corporate veil, and then I'm going to say extent of liability. Yeah. So yeah, I'm curious if any of you guys actually use that fact. Probably not a whole lot. So piercing the corporate veil, so extent of liability. So, and I think it actually would probably go into express authority, so the type of contract. So conducts, I'm just going to put here, conducts market surveys. So ability to enter into with Tesco, so long as within market surveys. And I'm going to say it appears as though it is because standard 50%. Actually, I think it might be a little confusing if I don't go through it in order. So let's go through breach of contract, and then let's go through agency and piercing the corporate veil, all of that. So I'm just going to switch that up a tiny bit. So first of all, let's go through offer, acceptance, consideration. So offer, here I'm going to talk about, Examco called Amy and asked to enter into 1-year contract with Tesco. So yeah. Oops. Enter into a 1-year contract with Tesco. It would agree to a 10-year contract. So there's an offer. Here is that an offer? And I'm gonna say yes. It probably is. But there's no price term. So here then there's no price term. So maybe not. Maybe it's just an invitation to offer. So then we have here Amy, which I don't think you need to get into the details of like offer, counteroffer issues here, but I think you could. If Examco would agree to 10-year, Tesco would grant Amy said it would agree to a 10-year contract. Yeah, okay, it would agree. Would grant standard, sorry, I lost it. What is standard 50% discount? Then looks like we have acceptance. Examco agreed. Amy signed the K contract. Tesco by Amy, president. Okay, and then is there consideration? It looks like there is a price paid for work done. So here, so for probably for work done. Oops. Okay, so does it look like there's a valid contract? I think yes. Did you guys all conclude that? Did you kind of go through contract briefly? I think probably, I'm assuming yes. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, I wasn't actually, you just addressed breach, yeah. So, oh yeah, 50% detriment. Oh, that's good. So whenever before you ever discuss breach, you always want to just establish the fact that there is a valid contract here. So we would talk about that. So applicable law would be common law because it's a service. So here, this is where I could say, oh, they conduct market surveys. Market survey is a service. So common law applies. So there, that's where I use that fact. Okay, good. Okay, offer, that stuff. So there is a valid contract, and then defense to formation, it's signed. The only thing I saw was that it's signed, or statute of frauds, so I don't think there's no defenses, or any defenses. Okay, and then breach. So breach is if performance due and fail to adhere. So, oops. Entered into valid K and revoked after signing. So is that a breach? Yeah. Do you guys think of any defenses here? I don't think so. I shouldn't say yes. Breach. None. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So there's that. So we've established that there's a valid contract, and you do have to do this because it says on what theory or theories may Examco bring an action recovery of damages, and it's against, how can you bring it against either of them? So you have to establish that there's an underlying claim. So generally speaking, when you have a BA issue that involves a contract, there's going to be, you have to establish that there's been some sort of a violation. So oftentimes if it's with a contract with like agency principles, you're going to establish breach of contract. Unless it tells you that there was a valid contract, you're going to have to establish that there was a valid contract. Oftentimes the other causes of action, you'll see, you might see someone, doing something bad, fraud or something like that. So you'd want to establish that. There's another BA PR question that deals with defamation. So that was an underlying claim, and what's the company's liability for that? Obviously in BA, there's other causes of action that accrue when somebody breaches a duty of loyalty, etc. And that's usually like a shareholder suit, something like that. So that's a little bit different, but yeah, here it's not going to be, it's Examco, it's the person that they entered into the contract with. So you're looking for liability on that contract. All right. So then let's look at, so then the next thing I went into is like, all right, then Tesco, if we want Tesco to be held liable, then you have to establish that Amy could properly enter into that contract. Okay, so then I'm looking, okay, well, does Amy have, so there's expressed actual authority and express implied authority. So here, does anything tell us that Amy has express authority? Nothing suggests actual express authority, but likely implied. No, you can't have implied express. That doesn't make sense. But they do talk about that in some of the answers, which is what threw me off a little bit there. So actual, not express authority, but president can likely enter into contracts. But that's really implied authority. Or am I missing something? I don't think so. Implied authority. So implied authority, so implied based on her title. So A is president, no limit as to what A can do. Okay. Okay, so there's no limit as to what A can do. So I think she's probably going to have he or she negotiated a contract with Examco, granted standard 50% discount. Okay, so they granted a standard 50% discount. So I think she probably does have implied authority as the president. So I'm going to say yes on that. And then apparent authority. This exists. I also think I'm going to use pretty much all of these same facts. I'm going to use all of these same facts here for apparent authority. So you would have both implied and apparent authority. Especially so, yeah. Implied and apparent. So I'm going to say yes to both. So she does have authority to enter into this contract. So if somebody that's allowed to enter into the contract does, then the company is going to be liable for it. So as long as it wasn't outside the scope. And it doesn't look like that, especially because if you look at their name, Tesco and Examco, it looks like they're in the same line of business. So you have that as well. So my conclusion here is going to be that Tesco liable for the contract. All right, any questions on that? Okay, good, thanks. All right, so then we're going to look at Examco v. Ben, Amy, Ben, and Carl as individuals. So a couple of things to note here. So we're going to go through each of these. So this is a contract case. So like I immediately jumped to that because I'm like, all right, so courts strongly favor not piercing when it's a contract case. So these are factors. So you're going to say this weighs in favor, or this actually weighs against piercing. Failure to observe corporate formalities. So they don't here. So it's incorporated. Each owner has same interest. They're scrupulous about holding directors' meetings to conduct corporate business and to make monthly distributions to the shareholders. So I'm not going to get to the all cash on hand. Okay, so they do that. So commingling, this is commingling assets. There's none. Inadequate capitalization. So inadequate capitalization here, they make monthly distributions to shareholders. Shareholders of almost all cash on hands. As a result, T has little cash on hand and frequently must So the fact that they frequently negotiate that, though, doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's not good. But I also think that it looks like it doesn't look like they have tons of outstanding debt. Nothing suggests they can't pay those debts. And they negotiate extensions rather than not paying, which is good. But I still think it's probably going to be, you might find that there's some inadequate capitalization there. I think you could kind of go either way on that one, though. Weighs in favor of piercing. And then I didn't answer this one at the top. Failure to observe corporate formalities. This weighs against piercing. Actively participate in the business. Yep. So here I'm just going through kind of on the whole, and then I'm going to talk about each of them individually. Amy and Carl are only, if they were to, they wouldn't be able to pay. Hang on one second. Oh, not be able to pay. Yeah, so I would use that too. I'm just referring to, but also, so that's what I'd probably use in my counter argument, Martha. That's a good call. If found liable, can't pay the Tesco contract. So this weighs in favor of piercing. Amy and Carl, so going back to actively participated in the business. So Amy and Carl are only only directors and are president and secretary. Okay, they're president and secretary. So this, they do actively participate. Active participation, but Carl holds no office and is not involved piercing A and C, but not. Oh. Yeah, so Andrew, so that's you could, so what I'm doing is, because I don't want to go through all these factors for 3 different people. So what I'm doing is I'm mentioning them here. I'm just talking about piercing in general. I'm talking about piercing in general, whether the court would want to pierce. I think that, and then in incentive liability, I'm going to talk about Amy, Ben, and Carl separately. So that's how I would do it. Just because I think that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense strategically. I don't think you'd be able to really get through piercing another way. Okay. Contractor court case, or contractor tort case, so that's already there. So this looks like, it looks like, so I think that you could probably go either way on this one. I actually really don't think that the court would pierce here, because they do adhere to the formalities. And I think the really strong thing is that it's a contracts case, because courts are really not likely to do that. So they're probably not going to pierce here. So especially because, actually to say the business, I can also use in here active participation in the business, that Amy entered into the contract as president of Tesco, or Examco. No, Tesco. Sorry. Not herself individually. Okay, so, and then extent of liability. So here, so I'm going to say, okay, so a court is not likely to pierce against anybody, but it is definitely not going to Amy. Ben. And here, extent of liability, if anybody, I'm probably going to say Amy and Carl is probably going to be the same, because Amy entered into it and it looks like she's okay. It looks like she did so rightfully, and then Carl told her to breach. So Carl looks like he told A to revoke the contract. Amy here entered it, but did so with authority. Factors weigh against. Oh yeah, Ben. Got it. Yeah, sorry. It's weird to me that they should have put the people that were most similar together, but they didn't. Not active in participation. Definitely not pierce, and told A. I think Carl actually has the most liability, since he told her to breach, but she still did it at his direction. Wait, Ben, what am I? Oh, Carl holds no office. Sorry, you're right. That's what I'm messing up. Okay. Ben told me to revoke. Got it. Switched it. Sorry, guys. All right. So there we go. So not likely to pierce. So now let's go through the fact pattern because I've gone through and answered this. So let's go through and see what I've used. So I've used Tesco conducts Tesco Inc. And then I say, okay, they conduct market surveys solely owned by Amy, Ben, and Carl. I haven't used this. Each paid $50 for 1/3 of Tesco's no par shares. Why are they telling me that they're no par shares? So maybe that goes to the capitalization piece. Did you guys use that fact? Yeah, nobody else used it. So Myra, where did you put it? Okay, you didn't know where to put it. So I think that so no par. God, par value. This is the one thing that I was actually like when we were going through it, I was like, oh, I didn't use that. Yeah, so undercapitalization. So I would say we should look up the definition of par shares because honestly, I don't remember, and this came to me while I was doing it. But I think that if anything, because par goes to the value of the stock, so I think that it's going to go to the undercapitalization of it. So just double check that. And I'm sure that that's in the selected answers, and I can look at that a little bit later too if need be if we can't figure it out. But oops. Okay, so let's keep going through it. But this is something we haven't used, so we're realizing that there's an issue that we're not addressing, or at least we're not bolstering something that we could. Tesco's president and secretary, and its only 2 directors, use that. Use the fact that Carl holds no office and is not involved in any aspect of Tesco's business. Amy and Ben are scrupulous about holding directors meetings to conduct corporate business and to make monthly distributions. As a result of the latter practice, Tesco's little cash on hand finds itself in the position of negotiating extensions for payments of its debt. I haven't used the fact that while Ben was on vacation, so I think that this is, I think this can go to the authority. I'm going to do something. I'm going to say here, did not get express from B because B was on vacation when A negotiated. Did you guys all use that fact? And then Examco called Amy asking her to a 1-year contract with Tesco. Amy said that if Examco would agree to a 10-year contract, Tesco would grant its standard 50% discount. Examco agreed and Amy signed the contract in the following manner. Tesco by Amy, president. When Ben returned, he said that he had thought for some time that the standard contract was unwise. This is I've used this in breach, and convinced Amy to revoke the contract with Examco. Examco wants to sue Tesco, Amy, Ben, and Carl for damages if found liable. And see, I hadn't used this, and I wasn't actually until Martha said it. If found liable, Tesco will not be able to pay. So I've used it. So the only thing that's left is that each paid $50 for 1/3 of Tesco's no par shares. So going through this and highlighting points out that we've missed something here. Any questions about that other than where did that little fact go? Okay, cool. All right, so now let me give you all 5 minutes. Actually, I need to take a little break because I've been talking so much. So let me get some water and stuff. So let's come back at 7:30. We'll reconvene. All right, we're back. Y'all ready to do number 3? I know, I'm excited too, Andrea. All right. Let's, God, talking this much like makes me lightheaded. Which maybe just means I need to go running more. All right. So let's look at number, I don't have number 3 printed. Let me pull it up here. All right. Let me pull it up on the screen. Okay. So number 3 was wills and trusts. Good time. So we want to see what we're dealing with here. So we're going to read the call to question, and then we're going to make our list A and go through this process all again. So what interest, if any, do Dot, Sam, and or Bob have in the house and the ranch? Discuss. So the fact that it's listing, asking what interest people have in particular property, that does tend to suggest either community property. It's probably not community property because it's not H or W. It also has D and S, and so that looks like daughter and son. So I'm pretty certain that we're dealing with some wills and trust issues here. And then what duties, if any, has Sam violated as trustee of the testamentary trust? So they're telling us we're in wills and trusts. And what remedies, if any, does Bob have against him? Discuss. So we're gonna start there. So we have this stuff I know pretty cold. So for wills and trusts, basically I'm looking at formation, revocation, omitted persons, duties, and then I would also probably list like distribution. But you guys might have a lot more listed here. This is just like one of my favorite subjects, so I know it well. So formation. Also, like what are you can say what are the terms? Revocation, has been revoked, or termination. Omitted persons, distribution, duties. Okay, so there's our list A. So then we'll go through it. So Wendy, a widow, so that means she doesn't have a spouse, owned a house in the city and a ranch in the country. She created a valid inter vivos trust, naming herself and her daughter, Dot, as co-trustees and providing that she had the power to revoke or amend the trust at any time in writing by a document signed by her and delivered to her and Dot as co-trustees. So that looks like, so it says that there's a valid inter vivos trust. The trust has, it doesn't have property yet, but she identified, she looks like she is intending to create a trust. It looks like that she's given herself the power to revoke it, which there's a dispute on how that's done there. But she's given revocation power, but she gives instructions on how it can be revoked. All right. So at Wendy's death, Dot was to become the sole trustee. So you do have a trust. So you do have designated trustees. You have both Dot and you have Wendy. And it's not a big deal if somebody doesn't want to be a trustee. The court can just appoint someone. So that's generally speaking not going to render a trust invalid. Okay, so at Wendy's death, Dot was to become the sole trustee and was directed to hold the assets in trust for the benefit of Wendy's sister, Sis, until Sis's death. So she had to hold the assets in trust for the benefit of Wendy's sister. So that tells you what the trust was to do. At Sis's death, the trust was to terminate. So that gives you its end date, and all assets be distributed to Dot. The sole asset in the trust was Wendy's ranch. So you have so you have the ranch and the trust. You don't have the house dealt with. And it says it's to terminate, and it goes to Dot. So, all right. So years later, Wendy prepared a valid will in which she stated, I hereby revoke the trust I previously established and leave my house and my ranch to my son, Sam. So this gets to revocation issues. So so that gets to revocation issues, and there's an issue here is whether that revocation is effective. So she leaves my house and my ranch to my son, Sam, as trustee. So now she wants Sam to be trustee, to be held in trust for the benefit of my brother, Bob. So now it's going to Bob. So she looks like she's made some changes here. 5 years after my death, the trust shall terminate, and all assets then remaining in the trust shall be distributed outright to Sam. So I don't know, some stuff happened in this family. But then she gives a termination of the trust. But notice here, she gives both the house and the ranch to her son, Sam. So here, then whether or not the house and the ranch go to Sam, it looks like, and particularly the ranch, it looks like it's depends on whether that revocation is effective. But it does look like it's probably, it says a valid will, so it looks like that will is, so we know that that's valid. And so the will definitely has the house in it. So Sam gets the house based on that, but we'll go through this. Wendy died. Following her death, both Dot and Sam were surprised to find her will. So this tells you that that the revocation instructions were not adhered to, because per the trust, the trust number 1. So providing that she had the power to revoke or amend the trust at any time in writing by a document signed by her and delivered to her and Dot as co-trustees. But here it says Dot and Sam were both surprised to find her will, and that means that it wasn't delivered. So you know that the revocation there was ineffective. Dot has refused to serve as trustee under the inter vivos trust. That doesn't matter. And claims that as a result, the trust fails and the ranch should immediately be given to her. So that is, that's probably not going to be an effective claim, because we know that the court will, even if she's refusing to serve as trustee, it does have one identified and the court can just appoint someone, so that's okay. Sam has agreed to serve as trustee under the testamentary trust and claims that the ranch is part of the trust. So the issue is, okay, well, is it part of the trust or is it not? So Sam then sells the house at fair market price to himself in his individual capacity and invests all the assets of the trust into his new business, Sam Solar. Bob objects to the sale of the house into Sam's investment. So, all right. So there's a lot of different issues here. So we have two different competing trusts. You have trust number 1, which is inter vivos trust, and then you have a will, and the will creates a testamentary trust. So you have both of those. Then you have, was there a valid revocation, etc. So I've listed out all of my issues here. So trust formation, intent, trustee res, etc. Then I have revocation. And then I have both of those, and this is just dealing with the ranch. So the ranch, it all turns, so which trust is effective. So you have to determine if the first trust is, will properly dispose of the ranch. And i.e. was trust number 1, the inter vivos trust, was it revoked? And then we're going to look at, the will, and then the valid trust, testamentary trust, and then the, trust property. What was in it, and then if somebody was omitted, and then we're going to get into the duties. All right, everybody with me so far? Okay, cool. All right. So first, we're going to trust formation. So Wendy owned a house in the city and a ranch in the country. Okay, so here it says a valid inter vivos trust. So if I could type, but I'm going to make some notes here just about, so testamentary intent, that's not really an issue. Trustee designated or court appointed. So Wendy is a trustee, is a co-trustee with Dot, and at W's death, D was to become sole trustee. Oh, sorry, that's in the wrong color. Okay, become sole trustee. Dot refused to serve as trustee under the inter vivos trust. And I'm going to do my conclusion here. So I'm going to say that, so you have that court may appoint trustee, will not fail on that basis. Okay, there's property. So I just like to, even though I know it's valid, I like to identify what's in it, just so that I can keep track of it. So it's just the ranch alone. It's not illegal. It's a beneficiary. Who's the beneficiary here? Sis. Okay. All right. So I have a valid trust, and I just make those notes here for myself. So here, the majority settlement must expressly reserve for the trust to be revocable. D did reserve power to revoke, providing that she had at any time in writing by delivered to her and Dot as co-trustee. Okay, so there's a majority and a minority. It doesn't like she and a minority, so she complied with the majority. So it is a revocable one. But the instructions were that she had to revoke by writing, signed by W, revoke by writing, signed by W, delivered delivered to her and Dot as co-trustees. So those were the instructions. And here, what did she do? So she prepared a valid will, stating I hereby revoke the trust, but both Dot and Sam signed W's will. Okay, so what that means is that the revocation was ineffective. Revocation ineffective, and still in effect. All right, so then what that means is it's effective. So so what interest do people have? So let's just do a different section. Oops. Oops. Okay, interest in the ranch. Dot, Sam, Bob. Oops. Okay, so Dot, so it's still effective, has a remainder interest in the ranch. Revocation ineffective, so not part of testamentary trust that benefits S. And same for Bob here. Benefits B. So these are interests. So essentially that's S and B have 0 interest, and Dot has a full remainder interest. There, so that was your interest. All right, so now let's deal with the house. So you have a valid will. So here it just says it was a valid will. Right? Yeah. So testing with capacity, intent, sign, writing, blah, blah, blah. So that's all valid. So I'm not going to discuss that. I'm just going to say, will formation, here's, give the rule, and then state that here there was a valid will, and that's it. Okay, so, and then I'm going to classify this as a valid trust. It's a testamentary trust. Terms of the trust are contained in a will or a document incorporated by reference as a will. So here, this was, so leave my house and my ranch to Sam as trustee to be held in trust for the benefit of my brother, Bob. So 5 years after my death, the trust shall terminate, and all assets then remaining in the trust shall be distributed outright to Sam. So testamentary trust. So this does contain all the terms, and it's in a will. So it's in a valid will. I don't know why I capitalized that. You don't need to, but that's okay. All right, so this is a valid testamentary trust. Everybody with me so far? Following along? Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Okay, so the trust property. So then initially she tried to put both the ranch and the house in it. But here, as established above, the ranch is not part of the testamentary trust as Ray because revocation is ineffective. Okay, that's explained above. But the house is. Oh my gosh, I keep doing that. So the house is part of the trust. So a house is part of trust, testamentary trust Ray. Okay. So who has an interest? So here for the testamentary trust, she's leaving everything to her son Sam as trustee. The reason, so to Sam, and then everything will go to the benefit of her brother Bob. And then after that, it goes to Sam outright. So Sam probably has an interest in the house and not in the ranch, but Dot might want to make a claim, because if Dot makes a claim that she was omitted, so she could claim to be an omitted child. So decedent failed to provide for a living child solely because the decedent believed the child to be dead or was unaware of the birth of the child. This is obviously not true. So W was aware of D because initially left, made D beneficiary and co-trustee of Inter Vivos Trust, did not believe D was dead. So she's not an omitted child, so D's not going to take anything with respect to the house. So interest in the house. So Dot Sam Bob. Okay, so Dot has no interest. Sam has remainder interest. 5 years after. Well, he technically has a vested remainder. 5 years after W's death, and Bob. It's not a shifting interest. Shifting means it's like there would be some sort of an event that happened. Because that's like shifting or springing. God, that I just got a flashback. Right, he dies. But so shifting or springing, I think that shifting and springing has to do with conditions, though. And it's usually more like executory interest, if I recall correctly. Whereas like this is a vested remainder because he's already vested, like he is going to get it 5 years after W dies. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Okay. So no interest. Vested remainder is 5 years after W's death, and then Bob has a 5-year interest. House or interest in this trustees. So 5-year interest in house. And that's it. So interest in the house. So then Sam's violations. So trustee duties. So here I listed all of them, and I listed sort of the buzzwords from my rules. So Sam agreed to serve as trustee under the testamentary trust and claims that the ranch is part of the trust. It's not, which we've already established. Sam then sells the house at fair market price to himself in his individual capacity. So he sold it to himself. But it wasn't a fair market price to himself in his individual capacity, but that looks like it's directly against what the trust says to do. So that doesn't look good. and invest all the assets of the trust into his new business, Sam Solar. So Bob objects to the sale of the house into Sam's investment. Okay, so then I'm going to look at, these are all the 7 different duties. So administer the trust in a good faith and prudent manner. It doesn't look like he's doing that, or like a reasonable person. Breach here because administering in his favor and sold house to himself. Invested all assets of the trust into new business, which is not diverse. So the fact that you're investing all of it in one thing and the fact that it's a new business is important, because then you don't really know the market and how well it's going to do. So that seems a pretty high risk. And it's also not diverse. So duty to segregate personal funds. So here I think he violated the duty to segregate because he sold the house to himself in his individual capacity. So there I think that he is commingling some funds, really. Duty not to delegate. There's no delegation of duties here, so that's not triggered. I'm not going to talk about it. Provide beneficiaries on a regular basis a statement of income expenses. So it does look like that he did, because Bob objected to the sale of the house into Sam's investment. So it looks like Bob is aware of it. Invest trust assets. There are these 3 different ways you can show it. I just would do probably common law prudent person test. So here, a prudent person would not invest all assets into single investment, particularly when new and not in his own business. And then duty of loyalty, not to do it for the benefit of yourself. So he's sold the house and invested all trust assets into new business. All right, so to himself here. So that's set. So there's violations of the duty to administer the trust, the duty to segregate, duty to invest, and the duty of loyalty. So there are numerous violations. And then what are the there's also these, sorry. So duty to earmark, duty of due care, remedies for breach. So I think there's a duty of due care, act as a prudent person, which is really the same essentially as duty to administer the trust. I think most people don't really separate those 2 out. I think there's slightly nuanced differences, but you can really just think of it as a duty of care. So I also think you can make a claim that there was a failure of the duty to earmark, because he's not labeling trust property as trust property because he sold it to himself. So he's labeling it really as his own. So sold house to himself, so labeling as his. And then this is not reasonable to invest solely in one business. Okay. So then remedies. And then these are all your potential remedies. You can award damages. You could put the funds in a constructive trust. You could ratify. They probably don't want to ratify. You probably remove the trustee. You probably remove Sam. You could probably award damages. You might be able to. You also might be able to just stop the transaction from occurring, or you could probably make him sell it back as well. So you could put a lien on the property. So those are your different remedies that are available. Any questions about this one? Okay. All right, so that's question 3. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Now take 5 and read question 4, and then we'll go through it. All right, so let's get going on this one. This one actually really isn't all that bad. It tests like, some slightly more obscure issues, but not really. Not really. So, okay. So first we're going to look at the call to question. So may buyer join claims for fraud and breach of contract in the same suit against seller? Discuss. Is buyer's allegation sufficient to state a claim for fraud involving the painting? Discuss. So this looks like Civ Pro. Does a federal court have SMJ of the suit? There's Civ Pro. May the federal court apply California law to decide a breach of contract claim involving real property? Discuss. That's Civ Pro, Erie Doctrine. On what issues, if any, would buyer be entitled to a jury trial? So it's getting the Seventh Amendment, right to jury trial, but it's also Civ Pro. So this looks like it's all Civ Pro so far. So I make my list A, PJ, SMJ, venue, joinder, pleadings. Then I just do pretrial, discovery, trial, appeals, and then res judicata, collateral estoppel, so that I don't forget those. So then I'm going to go through it. So, and then I actually, because based on the questions, I'm actually just going to list what I think the issues are too. So I have joinder, I have permissive, and I have compulsory. Number one, and then number two, buyer's allegation sufficient to state a claim for fraud. If that gets to notice pleading, you have to plead with enough particularity. So then you're going to go through the elements of fraud. So did you state those enough? And then you're going to go through SMJ, so federal question and diversity. Then you're going to go to Erie, so substantive law or procedural, and then jury trial. So those really look like the issues that are here. So let's go through it. So buyer who is living in New York, so that's a New York domicile, and seller who is living in California, so let's get there's diversity, entered into a valid contract agreeing to buy and sell a painting claimed to be an original Rothko, supposedly worth $1 million for that amount. In a separate valid contract, buyer agreed to buy from seller a parcel of California real property worth $5 million for that amount. So there's two transactions here. Transactions are totally unrelated. So when it gets to joinder, it looks like you can probably join. So it looks like you can probably join them because you can really join for any purpose so long as if it's permissive. And the court says may buyer join. So that's telling you that they want you to discuss permissive. It's not asking must, which is generally what they do. But you could be saying may if it was compulsory, and then you wouldn't be able to, it would destroy diversity. So you really do want to go through both. So you want to go through both of those. So let me just list the elements. Same transaction or occurrence does not destroy diversity. Okay, good. Then on June 15th, buyer resold the painting, but obtained only $200 because the painting turned out to be a fake. So that's not good. Buyer promptly notified seller of his intent to sue seller for damages of $1 million. Seller then informed buyer that seller would not go through with the purchase of the real property. Okay, so then there's this that they're trying to pull out of the property transaction. So when I remember that it says, when I looked at it, that they said that there was a claim for fraud. So I don't really see any facts on it, so I'm looking for that. So buyer filed suit against seller in federal court in California. Buyer claimed fraud as to the painting, alleging only that seller committed fraud in the supposed value and sought $1 million in damages. So you have to allege specific facts to show that each element is satisfied. So we're going to want to list out the elements of fraud here. Buyer also claimed breach of contract as to the real property and sought specific performance. Oh. Sorry, I still had this. It showed that it was sharing my screen, but then it wasn't. Is that better? Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know. All right, there you go. No worries. All right, so buyer filed suit against seller in federal court in California. So he claimed fraud as to the painting, alleging only that seller committed fraud in the supposed value. So there's nothing that alleges really specific facts here. Buyer also claimed breach of contract as to the real property and sought specific performance. Buyer demanded jury trial. Demanded trial by jury on all issues. So then I'm like, okay, well, there's one that is specific performance, so that's an equitable remedy and not something that the court determines. But the claim for damages is something that you're entitled to a trial by jury on. So So that answers the last question. So this really is a lot of different kind of smaller issues, but nothing too complicated, but you do have to just know the rules. So this one, it was hard for people that just didn't know these rules. All right, so let's look at, so it says may, so in the interest of justice at the judge's discretion. So a judge, I'm just gonna say judge can join any case, likely to do so here. It's not even asking if they will. I'm just gonna say can do so here. Involving same parties. Okay, this, but what is it? Compulsory and not arising out of same transaction in a separate occurrence because entered into valid K for the painting and separate valid K for real property. So it's not the same transaction or occurrence. It wouldn't, so it's not the same. So it's not compulsory, but it also doesn't destroy diversity because B is from New York and S is living in CA, California. So permissive, they can do permissive, can join permissively, but it's not compulsory. Any questions on that one? I'm assuming not. That was really simple. But did you guys know this rule when you got it? That's my bigger question. Yeah, that's the harder part. So the good thing is they're not really likely. Oh, good, Myra. They just asked this. This was from July 17. I'm sorry, July, was it 17? Yeah, it's July 17. July 17, but it's TO means transaction occurrence. So they're probably not going to ask like this one that's as simple, but they might. Like they do stuff like this, and they hadn't this is the first time they hadn't done joinder in a really long time. They still haven't done class actions in a really long time, I don't think. In my recent memory from the last time I looked. All right, so then we want to go to the complaint, so notice pleading. So for the pleading requirements. So also, just as an FYI, this was question 4 on the July 17 bar. So we did one from July 17 earlier, that torts one. So in the afternoon, you had this question first, the CIFRA one, which isn't that bad. And then you had that kind of crazy torts one. So you had that crazy torts one that had all those claims. And then you have the PT. So you want to just remember that, that's sort of what you had. Let me get... Okay, so for a complaint, so you have to give notice. So notice of a plausible, not just possible claim. So you have to have detailed assertions of fact underlying, put the other side on notice of a plausible claim. But with fraud does have to be pled with particularity. So that's why they give you fraud. That's why they give you fraud here. So notice pleading, so this requires notice of plausible claim, need not plead detailed assertions of fact here. Okay, so but fraud, you do have to plead with particularity. So establish fraud. So let's plead with particularity. So you want to put here, but you can plead malice, etc. You mean malice, intent, knowledge, and other conditions generally. So you really have to show that there was an intentional misrepresentation. So here, the only thing that was claimed, or the only thing that was alleged, that S committed in the induced value. Induced value. So no facts to show intentional misrepresentation, did not show seller misrepresented that painting was original. So yeah, I also think, like, I don't know why, but I also thought here, like, well, this is just getting to the, just to the pleading requirements. So I was thinking, I like went on this path in my mind about assumption of risk, etc. But you really don't need to go into that here. So make sure you really just focus on the questions that they're asking. So this is, I don't think that he's pled it with enough particularity. Or causation or anything. So failed to allege with particularity here. All right. So this, there's a failure in notice there, and then federal question. So then we're going to get to call 3, so SMJ. So there was no federal question because this is tort, and so this is breach of contract claims. So there's no federal question, not based on federal law. Okay, and then is there complete diversity? So this is where you are domiciled. So be domiciled in NY, S domiciled in CA. So there is complete diversity. Okay, amount of controversy. Oops. Amount in controversy in both is, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I'm doing that. Amount of controversy is 1 million for painting case and 5 million for property case. Okay, so that's it. So amount of controversy. So amount in controversy satisfied. Yay. Okay, so there's SMJ. So does the court have it? Yes. Did the federal court apply California law to decide the breach of contract claim? So under Erie, so a federal court in diversity case applies the substantive law of the state in which the court is located. So yeah, so they're going to, this is elements of a claim. So this is fraud, breach, well, it's really breach of contract. Contract claims are substantive in nature. Breach of contract claim involving the real property. So it's substantive in nature. So yeah, I mean, this is just really simple. So it's yes, California law applies. And then jury trial. So the 7th Amendment grants the right to jury trial. So with that, though, you have to know, so the demand for jury trial. So the distinction here is that for when you have 2 claims, first, you just need to know that the claim in law is going to be presented, and that's going to be decided by a jury. And then the one in equity is going to be decided by the court. And then but to get that, the defendant or the party needs to request a jury trial. So here, so B demanded a jury trial on all issues. So he demanded it, not entitled to, so in law, entitled to jury trial on painting case. because seeking 1 million in damages. Oh, one thing you might actually want to talk about, so $5 million. So he's seeking not $5 million for the property case. He's seeking specific performance. So I'm going up and I'm adjusting. So $5 million for the property case. The property is valued at $5 million. So because of that, then you can say that it's a $5 million claim because that's the value. Okay. And then equity. So court will hear not entitled to a jury trial. So on painting claim. And that's it. That's it for this essay. This essay is really brief. Any questions on it? Okay. Yeah, this one's simple. All right, so now I'll just take a few minutes. We'll just take like 4 minutes. At 8:20, we'll come back and we'll do the PR one. All right, so let's do this last one. And then I'm going to have some dinner because I am hungry. All right. Let's look at this one. All right, so what ethical violation, if any, has Len committed? Discuss. So this is just PR answer according to California and ABA authorities. Good. So I do my list A. I do my list A. They're at the top. So confidentiality, loyalty, financial, competence, candor, fairness, and decorum. And then I go through and I did my list B already, but let's go through the fact pattern. So Claire met with Len, a personal injury lawyer. So she'd been to consult with him in his office and told him that she had burned her legs when she slipped on some caustic cleaning solution spilled on a sidewalk outside hotel. All right. Len agreed to take her case and they properly executed a retainer agreement. So there's financial issue. They're also, she's telling him a story and the story seems pretty, like it's a pretty likely because she's showing him, she says that she slipped on some caustic cleaning solution. And then next it says Claire showed Len scars on her legs that she said were caused by the cleaning solution. All right. She also showed him clothes that she said were stained by the cleaning solution. So she's showing him this stuff. So this is kind of giving him a lot of evidence. Len took the clothes from her and put them in his office closet for safekeeping. So that's an issue with respect to holding onto client property. So Len filed a lawsuit in state court against Hotel. So he files a suit. Hotel's lawyer, Hannah, called Len. She told him that this lawsuit was the 14th lawsuit that Claire had filed against Hotel. So it looks like Claire's got some issues. And this may be the case. And that she intended to move the court to declare Claire a vexatious litigant. So I don't know if you guys knew what that was or didn't, but that's somebody that constantly files suit. And you can probably get that from context, even if you didn't know that. But it's actually really fun to do if you can get someone like that, because I've done that. But you're just getting someone to declare that, and it means that they can't sue. So it means that, and the reason that someone is declared a vexatious litigant is because they file lots of frivolous claims, essentially. So Len and Hannah had been engaged 2 years ago before they amicably decided to go their separate ways. So that looks like a potential conflict of interest, a personal conflict of interest, which is more a thing in California than it is in under the ABA rules. So I'm going to make note of that distinction there. Len called Claire and left a message asking her to call him about an important update in the case. So he's calling her. He also sent her an email with a red receipt tag with the same request. So he's trying to communicate with her. He received a notice that she had read the email but did not receive any response. So it looks like she's failing to talk to him. Over the next week, he sent her a copy of the same email once each day with the same red receipt tag. Each day he received a notice that she had read the email but did not receive any response. So it looks like she's failing to communicate with him. So this looks like she might be difficult and he might want to withdraw from the case. He then sent her a registered letter asking her to contact him, but again, did not receive any response. A week later, he sent her another registered letter stating that he no longer represented her and that he would return her clothing to her. Okay, so that's duty to withdraw, or permissive withdrawal. Claire soon called Len, begging him not to fire her, saying she had not responded to him because I didn't think calling you back was such a big deal, which seems a little bit ludicrous on these facts. He then asked her about the 13 prior lawsuits against Hotel. She replied, "What 13 prior lawsuits? Besides, Hotel's got more money than I do." He told her that he was sorry, but that he was no longer her lawyer. So he fires her. So it's a matter of whether or not he's allowed to do that. The next day, Len went to his office closet to retrieve Claire's clothes to send them back to her. To his dismay, he realized that he had sent her clothes along with his to be dry cleaned, so that's destruction of evidence. He rushed to the dry cleaner and learned that all of the clothes he had sent had been dry cleaned and that all of the stains had been removed. So a big problem there then with the client property. All right. So a lot of different issues here. So as I went through that, I was making note of all of the issues. So if I always start with an attorney, establishing that there's an attorney-client relationship. I talk about the scope, who controls what. And then I say that there was a retainer agreement. One of the reasons we gave this to you is because there is that is one of the updates to the rules. Is with respect to retainers. So California has gotten stricter in requiring their retainer agreements. It must be a true retainer, where money is used. Money is only used as you use it. So it has to be a true retainer. Then there was the issue with him putting the property in his closet. So ABA, you have to safeguard an account. So you have to safeguard the property. So it looks like there's an issue here. And then California, you have to identify and label client property upon receipt. You have to place it in safekeeping as soon as practicable, and maintain records. So it looks like there's some failures there. Then duty of loyalty, so potential. Under ABA, for just potential, you don't need informed consent. California, you need informed written consent if it's between clients, I think. Actually, we just leave that. Unless it's purely personal. And then I think you should have to inform them. And then I listed actual conflict, although I don't think I see one here. And then duty of candor. So I think that's duty of candor. Duty to avoid frivolous claims. So that's duty of candor to the court. So those frivolous claims have, there's a non-frivolous basis in law or fact. That's a requirement that every claim you file has to have a non-frivolous basis. Then you have the duty to communicate. So you have to keep client promptly informed, reasonably consult about means to accomplish client objectives. And then permissive withdrawal. Let me just stick those requirements in here really quickly. Okay. And then you have to have a valid basis. Oh, no, that's it. Okay. So will not harm the client. And then in California, so this is ABA. Actually, let's do this. CA. California allows it. Oops. Gosh, I keep doing that tonight. Client insists on presenting unlawful claim or defense. Client renders it unreasonably difficult for L to carry out employment. There's a whole lot of different bases, but those I think are the two that apply here. All right, so let's go through this. So attorney-client relationship, I just like to establish that one has been formed. L agreed to take C's case. I just put the note here for scope of representation to remember who controls what. It doesn't come up here, but I generally just make note of that. Fee agreement. So the fee agreement. So this tells us, so the retainer, this tells us that it was, there's a question. Okay, so retainer. So it says here, he executed a retainer agreement. Oops. Executed a retainer agreement. So for a valid retainer agreement, hold on, let me just pull up because this is one of the new rules. So give me 1 second. Let me actually just pull this up here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so if you look at, I'll put it at the very top here. So this is the update. So when an attorney utilizes a retainer, the client must agree to the retainer after the attorney informs the client that, if this is the case, that the client is not entitled to a refund on part or all of the fee, if that's the case. Retainers must be deposited into a client trust account maintained in California. So that's an update. So so it just says that they executed it, executed a retainer agreement. So ABA, so long as, so I'm going to say here, so long as informed. So it needs to be in writing. So, so in writing. Executed, so in writing. And then I'm going to put here, okay, so long as deposited, maintained in CF. Yeah, under the new rules. Yeah. Okay, client property. So then you have a duty to safeguard an account. So under the ABA, ABA is a little bit more lenient here. So you have to safeguard. So he here, go to declare a vexatious litigant. Took clothes from C and put in his office closet for safe keeping. And then he left them there. I'm trying to see how long he left them there. Read receipt over the next week. Registered letters. So left them there for at least 1 week. Without accounting for them or doing anything to safeguard them. I think that it looks like mixed with his clothes. Well, he did mix them with his clothes. Mixed C's clothes with his clothes, which fails to safeguard them because then it's getting contaminated essentially. And then also sent her C's clothes to be dry clean. Learned that all of the clothes had been dry clean and all of the stains had been removed. Okay, so violation there. And this is really just all the same facts. So here, I wouldn't probably separate these out just because there's not really a need to, because all the facts are exactly the same. I would just have in my conclusion about the violation. And so California, there's absolutely a violation. Because it's a little stricter. There might be a tiny bit of wiggle room in ABA, but probably not. Violation. Okay, duty of loyalty. So the potential here is, this is with respect to L and H engaged 2 years ago, but amicably decided to go separate ways. So material. Okay, so no one conformed. So there's a potential conflict because they've been engaged, but they amicably decided to go their separate ways. So there is a potential conflict. So there's no informed consent necessary for ABA. And here, because it's purely personal, I'm going to say he did not tell C. He didn't tell C, but that's okay. So no violation because consent not. Actually, I think in California you have to inform, but you don't need written consent. Form and L did not. No violation in ABA. Okay, and then there's no here there is no actual conflict because they amicably decided to go their separate ways. So separate ways. They also had a telephone call. For H and L had a polite conversation. So demonstrates is no ill will between them. Okay, so I'm going to say there is no actual conflict. Okay, duty of candor, duty to avoid frivolous claims. So here there's the 14. So there's a lot of facts here, so I'm not going to type all of them in. But all of this 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth paragraph, Claire called Len begging him not to fire her, saying she had not responded because she didn't think calling you back was such a big deal. So that's more communication. When he asked her, she replies, "What 13 prior lawsuits? Besides, Hottel's got more money than I do." So there's an issue there with the frivolous claims. I'm just going to say option. Oops. No, hang on 1 second. Here I'll say what the between prior suits, and besides, I do. It looks like H told L the suit was the 14th suit against H. But here, I think that there's also some counter-argument facts that you can use. So, we always want to try to find at least a couple of counter-arguments in every essay. Here it's, so C told L that she had burned her legs when she slipped on some caustic cleaning solution. Showed scars, showed clothes. So, but I still think this is going to be frivolous because that's not enough, especially when finding this out, especially because you can look this up fairly easily. But so, all right, so avoid frivolous claims. So there is no basis for it, but he did probably believe it at the time. So I think he would probably just have to withdraw it. But I think that he might be in trouble there for the frivolous claim. And then the duty to communicate. So to keep C promptly informed, I think this is all of those facts that are in the third paragraph about how much he tried to communicate with her. So he didn't violate paragraph 3. I'm just going to say that. Here, so then we're going to look at the withdrawal. ABA, you can withdraw when it would not harm the client. Here it's not going to harm C because it appears suit has just been filed. So I think it's probably going to be okay there. And then here, it appears that client is insisting on presenting an unwarranted claim or defense. So appears as though claim is frivolous, and then also difficult, sees multiple failures. So I would use all of those facts. So I would actually type all those, but I'm not going to type all those in because I don't think that's really necessary for us right now. But I would type all those facts in from paragraph 3. So I'm just going to make a reference to paragraph 3. All right. So issues all over the place. A lot of this stuff, this doesn't have all of the typical issues, but this is it is pretty ripe with issues um, here, but not all the really common ones. You have the duty of candor, duty to communicate's fine, but the client property, so that one's a little bit of a stranger issue. And then you have financial responsibility. That is very common. Um, yeah, and yeah, besides they have more money, they would be attributed to frivolous claims. Yeah, yeah. I have that in here too. Avoid frivolous claims. Besides, hotels got more money than I do. Oh, it's a typo. All right, does anybody have any other questions about this? That's okay. All right. Good job getting through this mock bar. It's huge the fact that you guys completed it. So make sure you go see Professor Israel, Professor Matsumoto, Professor Berger if you guys have any questions. And I updated the calendar. I had to cancel that remedies workshop last week, but I rescheduled it for this Wednesday. But then that means we have workshops Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I just didn't know if that was too much for you guys. So if you want to send me an email, I can move one or two to next week. But just let me know. Just let me know what you want. I just wanted to kind of leave that next week completely open for you guys just for studying. So, all right. All right. Have a good night. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Martha. Good night. Good night, Luciana.